Hi, I'm Laura Klopp, and in this podcast, Creating Safe Schools, I'll be exploring ways that teachers and administrators can make their schools as safe, welcoming, and affirming as possible. I'll interview members of the LGBTQ community to allow them to share their experiences and to allow us as allies to learn from them. I'll talk with legal experts, administrators, teachers, and we'll hear from the students themselves. Together, we can do our part to ensure that every student at school feels safe, confident, and secure. For more information on this topic, visit creatingsafeschools.com. This podcast is part 2 of my conversation with Alex, Sienna, and Jasmine.
Like, the changes have been very subtle, but even then, that little bit of some small signs of support really make a huge difference. And I mean, it sounds like it wouldn't, but there's really a different feeling in the air kind of thing when you walk around. Everything just feels a little better.
So what to you, to make that small feeling for all of you, and Jasmine, you're not in high school anymore, but talk about when you were in high school, or it's, again, less of an issue at college, but what things do teachers do, can teachers do, can administrators do? There's the badges you talked about. There's obviously respecting your pronouns and your name. What other things, if teachers are listening to this saying, what can I do to not only say, hey, here, you can talk to me, I'm a safe person, but what else, what sorts of things as you go through your day do you notice teachers doing or having in their rooms, or anything that improve that sense of the school being safe?
One thing I have noticed, some teachers will sometimes hand out sheets asking name, pronouns, and if they could use it and when they could use it, and that already kind of tells people if they're supportive or not. But if not that, sometimes I've had some teachers who at the start of the year might talk about how they're available to discuss things, or sometimes they'll just have a small sign. It is really small things that make you okay, this person is safe to talk to. And by having them feel safe to talk to, it already opens up a lot of, I guess, it feels better. It feels safer.
Jasmine, Sienna, do you have anything to add that would be things that made you feel safer, made you feel better from your teachers or administrators?
What I've noticed is that, sort of adding on to what Alex said, they are really I guess, open and honest. I don't know how else to describe it, but they do kind of offer in the beginning of the year. What I saw is that one of my teachers handed out sticky notes and stuff and just asked put down whatever name you use or whatever pronouns and all that stuff. That was what I saw in the beginning. And I also see teachers just hanging up certain things on the walls, hanging up flags, all that stuff. And it's been nice seeing that. It really has.
And even beyond that, I've seen teachers have more of just casual conversations about, I had a teacher talk about the Don't Say Gay bill a bit ago, and just her being open about talking about it was kind of just an indicator that she was, a person that I could talk to.
Mm-hmm.
So even just keeping the conversation open is definitely a big step.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I recognized retroactively that when I was teaching, I didn't have signs up. I didn't have a sign saying I'm a safe space. I would have totally done that. It just was not something that honestly I thought to do. And I wish I had stumbled upon something saying, hey, it changes it. I mean, I think the only redeeming thing I had was actually listen to my students and talk to my students.
Yeah. And with you, I mean, even if you didn't put any of those things up, I feel like so many people felt safe to come to you just by other students saying you were safe, because of how open and conversational you were about those kind of things.
Yeah, I wish I had known what I didn't know. I'm sure there were students where I could have been, someone who they came to and that they just didn't, and that I failed in some way. And that's one reason this is really important to me, is to help teachers, just help them be aware of what sorts of, like, one thing that came across, again, I just went about my day, teaching. And one thing I came across in researching for my site was that if teachers just attend a GSA meeting, even if they're not the sponsor, even if they're not heavily involved, if they just pop their head in sometimes and say, hey, I just wanted to say hi and see what's going on. And, or, I had the art club, and to say, hey, we can team together. What can the art club and the GSA together do to create some kind of a diversity mural in the school? Like, there are things that can be done, where teachers, and another thing that is just a suggestion I'm putting out there, since you're president of the GSA, one thing that came up in that vein is invite a teacher to the GSA meeting day, where everyone goes to a teacher and says, hey, it would be great if you would just pop your head in at the GSA meeting to say hi to everyone. And teachers who might not think to go would be like, okay, yeah, sure, I can do that. And they spend 5 minutes. They don't need to take the whole time going in, but just showing their face then again shows people who might not know them, oh, here's one more teacher who's safe.
Yeah, I've never done quite that. Like, we've never done a going to teachers and asking them to come join. But we have had counselors sit in sometimes, and we have had some teachers nearby walk in and stay around, and it's definitely made an impact too. Yeah, definitely. I do agree with that.
Jasmine, what are some of the things that you saw teachers do that was helpful, or wished teachers had done that would have made things more helpful?
Well, I do agree with what you guys have been saying about GSA. As an LGBT person, I was never actually comfortable with GSA, no matter what school I've been in. And I think this has been mentioned before, but I think it is really the small comments that make a safe place. I was really hyped in your class when you were talking about going to Pride and you had the photo of yourself and you looked super happy. That, I think that's really what built up a safe space. And just the fact that you talk to us as adults, because a lot of teachers don't really talk to you. It's super professional. It's just straightforward. But you would sit down and talk to us like we're actual people. And that it's just building a safe relationship. I think that's a basis for that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
I completely agree with that. Yeah. It's great when teachers are open like that and they just talk to you like how they would, an acquaintance or something like that. And not every teacher does have to do that, but it's just really refreshing.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
I don't understand teachers who don't. You are people. Why would any teacher not talk to you like you're people?
Yeah.
I'd say what you were doing, Miss Klopp, is the most important thing a teacher can do, because for 2 years I never went to the GSA meetings because I couldn't be out. And I was worried about being outed if I went. So there are definitely kids who can't attend or maybe don't want to. So those classroom environments are definitely the most important thing.
It makes me feel, I have to say that, and I did not ask that question in order to have you guys say nice things to me, so thank you. But that time at lunch every day was 100% far and away my favorite part of the day every day. You could not have dragged me out of there. You could have said they will offer you a 4-course meal, all professionally catered every day at lunch in the teacher's lounge if you would go. And I'd be like, nope, I'm sitting here eating my veggie burger with my kids because it is my favorite part of the day a million times.
I remember the veggie burgers.
They're so easy, man. But it's and there were days where, y'all were just playing tag, and there were days where there were heartfelt conversations, and there were days where everyone was just doing art and doing their own thing. And yet it always was just if I could have from 8:30 in the morning until whatever 3:45 in the afternoon or whenever school ends, 8:45 to 3:45, if I could have just sat in my room with all y'all all day, doing art and talking and stuff, I've never left. I'd still be there right now. I wouldn't even go home, and I'd be like, this is my favorite school. I would. My husband would miss me probably, but
I definitely agree with that. I'd say honestly, for the year that you were here, that was my best part of the day as well. It felt this like the safest place. It felt so refreshing and like so familial. It was just a very happy time, and I wish I hadn't taken it for granted as much.
And I do miss it. And all right, so I'm going to move on to what we talked about a little bit, the Don't Say Gay bill. And obviously that got a lot of attention in the media. I know some schools did walkouts, but yours did not. Did you consider doing a walkout for it?
We did. I talked with, I'll just call her a teacher who was considering doing walkouts with us, both in protest of the bill and even like banning LGBT books and whatnot. We never ended up doing that because the bill was altered enough. Like, it's definitely still not good, but it wasn't as terrible as it had been. And beyond that, there was a lack of students who would have participated because a lot of us were in the closet and couldn't do it. And there wasn't enough support that we could garner.
You don't feel like there are enough allies, even, people who would have participated simply because they support the community, even if they aren't members?
Yeah, it's sort of like we definitely have supporters, but no one like cares enough to do that kind of thing.
Right. They support with minimal effort supporters.
Yeah.
Which is better than detractors.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So each one of you, I'm going to ask you one at a time. So take a moment to think about this, because I really want to have your heartfelt response and what you could say. If you could be in the room right now with someone who pushed for this bill, who voted for this bill, maybe who pushed for some of the more restrictive measures of this bill, like the required outing of students that was eventually taken out. And let's say that they would actually listen to what you had to say. They wouldn't tune you out. They would hear you and, say things to make them recognize you as a person, or say things to help them understand how you feel. Or what would you say to someone who supported and voted for that bill and would even have voted for it had it been more restrictive?
Well, I think first, no matter if they're like for or against it, I would ask them to read the bill, because there's a lot of like hype going on both sides, like the Don't Say Gay. It's not actually a Don't Say Gay bill. And there's a lot of, I know it's changed since it's passed, but there's a lot of stuff going around about it. And like a lot of people don't actually know what it's about. Like, I didn't know what it was about, so I had to actually go on and read the bill. And I don't think it's actually that bad. Like, the only part I think is concerning is that it's vague on the specific line where it says classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in grades kindergarten through third grade or in a manner that isn't age appropriate. Because age appropriate, it depends on the situation.
Right.
And so I think it needs to be specific.
Do you think they left it vague on purpose? Because I don't know if you know, but Senator Lauren Book in the Florida Senate, she proposed an amendment that would basically have said, it basically was an amendment that said, look, if this is talking about families, talking about the fact that you can have two dads or whatever. If a kid is talking about their family, or if they're sharing family stories, or if you're talking about LGBTQ people in history and historical events, like say studying Harvey Milk or somebody, that they would be accepted, not accepted, EX, that they would not be, that those things would be allowed, that the bill would not cover conversations about families or just living situations, and wouldn't restrict talking about historical figures, even for younger kids. And that amendment was voted down.
Well, from what I've seen in the wording and like a bunch of people examining it, it does technically say that, but it's in a vague way to where if a parent complained against that, it could just be banned in that specific school. And they say parents won't have a say in it because it's the school board that determines what's age appropriate. But if parents actually take it to court, of course they're going to get a say in it.
Right. I think some people, so you don't see it that bad. And I mean, I think it's great that you don't, because that means that it hasn't negatively impacted you that strongly. I think a fear some people have is that the very existence of bills like this, which call out LGBTQ identities as being inappropriate for school, inappropriate conversations for school at any grade, means that LGBTQ youth are being given the message that who they are is inappropriate. Even if it's vague and even if it's unenforceable, it's potentially sending a message to youth saying who you are can't be mentioned at school. And if you are being mentioned, it has to be age appropriate, because who you are isn't okay to talk about for younger grades, or might not even be appropriate to talk about for later grades. And books with characters like you aren't appropriate for libraries or to be read in classes. Do you feel like that is not that damaging because it's vague? Or do you feel like that message isn't being conveyed that strongly? Or I mean, I think, what's your thought about that perspective?
Well, I'm not saying that the vagueness is a good thing. The vagueness is actually what makes it a terrible bill, because it's like a step in the wrong direction. If we keep conceding, eventually it'll just outright be banned. But I think a lot of where this is coming from is because people who are homophobic usually tie like the LGBT community to sex. Like you see gay people and you just think sex. And so that's where they're coming from and what they're thinking. So like if you have two dads, it's like, oh no, my 3-year-old's going to think about sex. And it's not how it is, but that's how they see it. And that's part of the problem with the message that's in it. I think the bill would be fine if it passed, if they could just sort of work out the specific things. Because like around like maturation, kids should learn about sex, because that's when they're learning about their bodies. And so I'd say that is age appropriate to learn about like same-sex relationships.
That makes sense. Thank you. Okay, so Sienna, what message would you have for someone who voted for or supports this legislation?
So what I want the person to really understand is to have a bill like this and have it to be this like vague and confusing has caused, kids in high school and lower to be afraid of what could happen to them in the future. And if it was clarified that, oh, it does this, it does that, like some things aren't as bad, it still caused a lot of like mass confusion, especially in my high school, and fearing, kids were really fearing that they would be outed, that this and that would happen. So no matter how you look at it, it's had a negative effect. And I'd want that person to understand that it puts so many kids in distress for the long run. And it's just really, it's sent the wrong message to a lot of parents too, who aren't supportive of LGBT, from what I've seen online, that it's just that there's something wrong going on in schools, that things about gay people have been talked about that is inappropriate, and parents are hearing that and they're just getting all like, confused and starting to think that there's something wrong going on in schools. So this bill is going to like help with that. So it's just with the bill just being so hard to understand when you go and read it, and seeing so many people online being confused as to what it actually means, it's just caused so much stuff left and right. So if it were to be clarified and there was more care put into it to really understand what it's doing, that would be so helpful. So I'd want that person to understand just how much it's caused just by it existing.
Alex, what would you say?
I definitely agree with both of you a whole lot. And Jasmine made a few points that I was considering making as well. In that, I talked to my dad about this bill when it came out after I got outed, because he was a little worked up about it. And I think he has a similar opinion that everything about LGBT is about sex. And he was like, that's not appropriate to be teaching young children. And I do agree. We shouldn't be teaching third graders about sex. Like, that's not a thing yet. Like, wait till middle school or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem comes also with the fact that if we're going to refer to it as a sex thing, then why then is it okay to teach third graders about like heterosexual kind of things? It's the bias that concerns me, and also similar to what Jasmine said, the bill is just a bad sign. Sort of just like they put their foot in the door of maybe now we could start passing and cracking down on other schools and other LGBT like things in the state, and it was just very concerning. And when the bill first came out, like Sienna said, there was a lot of panic. No one really understood what was going on. The bill wasn't very clear on things. It was just, I could barely get any information on it outside of some news sites. There was definitely panic, like genuine fear, and I felt genuine fear about what that could potentially mean, and about maybe even just younger children who would start to feel bad about themselves because, why can't we talk about that kind of thing? And of course, third graders aren't going to be interested in looking into the political media and being like, hey, why can't we talk about this? But it's just, if the bias is there and they say something and then they're not allowed to talk about it.
Right.
That's where the problem comes in.
Right. I wonder if it's almost more insidious for the younger kids who haven't really come to terms, like you talked about your confusion initially and you were figuring things out, and the kids who are in that stage and this is happening and they haven't kind of already come to terms with who they are, it might make it harder or more painful for them to envision that process.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm not saying we need to start advertising any LGBT things in like kindergarten to third grade classrooms. It's just the problem comes when you then don't allow those conversations. And I'm not saying every conversation is getting banned. Like you said, if a child has like two gay parents or something like that, they could talk about that openly, and that's good. I'm definitely happy to hear that. There's definitely the issue of how are schools going to take it? It's not like everyone's going to have the same perception of the bill. So if a teacher is outright against LGBT in the classroom, there's no guaranteeing that teacher then would follow the bill correctly, I suppose.
And I think Jasmine made a really good point that the bill kind of in a way just assumes that any talk of, and you said this too in terms of the fact that it's still okay to talk about heterosexual couples. If you're not talking about things related to sex at all in the younger grades, you can't be talking about any couples. You can't be talking about anyone getting married. You can't be talking about, but the concept that just because you're talking about a couple suddenly means you're talking about sex is ridiculous. You can say, okay, so this is a person who was born a girl and feels more comfortable and feels more as if they are a boy. Like, there are simple ways to say things that you can explain in more depth later when people are more able to understand more information, but that aren't sexual. They're just, okay, this is just who this person is, and this is what this person discovered about themselves. Let's go on and go play in the playground.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And that, like, the teachers don't, it's not asking teachers to like bring up LGBT conversations in the classroom. It's just, if a child feels like they need support, I feel like they should get the support they need.
The teacher shouldn't worry. Am I allowed to talk to this child about this? Is this going to come down on me? I don't quite understand what the repercussions are because the bill is so vague. So what can I or can't I do here to support this child? When in the end, most teachers really just want to support their kids.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, you guys have been great. I think this has been excellent. I really appreciate it. I'm going to ask you each one more thing. And then if you have anything else that you wish I'd asked or that you wish that you wanted to say that I didn't ask, So after this, be thinking if there's anything else you want to close with. But before we get to that, what would you all like the future to hold? Like, let's say you can look at 10 years from now. What are schools like? What is the environment in schools, and what gets it there?
Anyone want to start with this?
I'm like gathering my thoughts about it. They're going in like all directions.
I sort of have an idea if you guys are okay with me going first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. It's sort of like, I feel like a lot of people feel like we're trying to force ourselves onto them. But in reality, all I really want in the future is just kind of an unbiased, let people be who they are kind of thing. Just, I don't know, like nothing too much for or too much against people. Just, if someone wants to exist a certain way, then I feel like there should just be ways that they can. I don't really know how else to explain it other than, just being positive about people and loving people.
Yeah, just accept everybody. Just accept everybody for who they are. I think that's, yeah.
Like, even, I'm not like, I get people get concerned about forcing yourself onto people, but it's just, even if you're like in disagreement with it, you don't have to care if it's not affecting you. There should be open places for everyone to talk about their concerns, but it shouldn't be a thing where, oh, you're trying to turn my kid gay or something like that, because that's absolutely not the case. It's just, we are trying to be who we are, and it's definitely nice to have support in doing that. And that's really what it comes down to. It's not that complicated a thing.
Okay, so Sienna, Jasmine, anything to add, or I'm sure that what Alex said is no different from what you want, but is there anything that you would add to that?
I think it would be good to have like more just open dialogue about LGBT topics, just have it be a norm. Because I feel like the biggest problem with like younger people in the LGBT community, and even some older people, is the internalized homophobia. Because that's like literally the killer. It's what leads people to a lot of drastic actions because they feel alone or like they're different or weird. And it would help a lot if people could see other people like them. That's why so many people they really like all these different terms like bisexual and pan, because there's people like you, and what you're feeling it's not weird, it's normal.
I mean, I'm of the opinion of just maybe getting rid of labels at some point in the future, but
I think that's a tricky thing. Getting rid of labels, but then people who are having trouble figuring out their own selves, at least until it's so generally accepted in society, you know what I mean? I think the labels can maybe help, but then I agree that maybe someday when everything is normalized, then we wouldn't need the labels anymore, right?
Yeah, I definitely get that.
Yeah.
I think the problem with labels is that people sometimes they do it backwards. They try to fit themselves into the label instead of finding the label that fits them. Like lesbians wear the checkered shirts, and you can't be a lesbian if you're not butch, or you're not gay if you're not flamboyant. And people, they try to fit into that, and that's just as toxic as being homophobic.
Yeah, there's a lot of stereotypes surrounding that, and it confuses people when they're trying to discover who they are. And I've personally experienced that too, where I was like, well, I'm gay, but I'm not really, I'm interested in girls, but I don't dress all that masculine, nor do I really want to, it's just confusing sometimes.
And for me, I want to dress more masculine just because it makes me feel better about myself. But even recently, I wear nail polish right now, and I've gotten a lot of, well, if you're a guy, why are you wearing nail polish and that kind of thing? And it's it really doesn't matter. Definitely, I feel like similar to what Jasmine said, there's all these stereotypes surrounding, even within the community, of what people should aim for or try and be. And that just shouldn't be a thing. Your identity is your identity, no matter what you look like, or no matter, how you dress or act.
No matter what makes you feel comfortable and happy. if it makes you feel more happy to dress more masculine, but it also makes you happy to wear nail polish, like, who is that hurting?
Yeah, honestly.
Mhm. I do in the future want to just not see all of this hate surrounding people dressing how they want to, because I hear it all the time of kids getting harassed for wearing certain items of clothing or wearing makeup or nail polish and all that stuff, and it's just not necessary. It doesn't matter, because you don't go home and it like affects you and hurts you in your daily life that that man was wearing nail polish, like, oh gosh, it's hurting me. No, that's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, I guess within that realm, but a little bit different. I hope in the future, because it's a little bit personal, but for me, since I'm a trans guy and Sienna's a girl, and it's sort of like, even more so after transition, but we kind of just appear to be straight, and it feels like sometimes there's a bit of exclusion when you appear to be like cis straight, even if you're not.
Mhm.
And I just hope maybe that bias within the community will go away too at some point.
So back to the labels, where labels, even within the community, can be harmful because they create
Yeah.
expectations.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
it makes me feel guilty that I'm a dude who likes women. And it's like, oh, how do I feel about that,
I feel like that's one of the problems in the LGBT community. Because, like, if Sienna or I were to date a man, well, Sienna, you're already dating one, but people would say, like, oh, you're straight. You're not part of the community because you're dating a man. Like, well, you're pan and I'm bi. It doesn't change that. It doesn't change your attraction towards other genders. It just means
Yeah.
you're dating one.
Exactly. And the way that I dress, maybe I appear, since I wear dresses and stuff like that, more feminine things. Maybe I just appear that, I'm acting feminine and dressing that way, and I'm dating a man. So it's like, what I am is not real, since I'm appealing to one side when that's not the case. I'm not appealing towards anything.
In the research that I did for creating the website, it was actually, and this surprised me, but it was transgender people, which was not a surprise, and then also bisexual people who tended to feel the most excluded from both the heterosexual cis group of people, but also the LGBTQ community because of that. And that wasn't something that I would have thought of, or would, coming at this just as an ally who hasn't experienced this, it's eye-opening to understand in a way how much those labels do end up in some ways helping people identify, and then in other ways completely creating harmful expectations regardless of who you're speaking to.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And this is going to be a bit of just kind of a 180. I feel that way too. I'm on the A spectrum, and I don't really have a label that fits me right now. And I find a lot of people who talk about asexuality in a really weird way. And I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. But there's a lot of labels associated with asexuality as well, where it's like, oh, well, you're either all or nothing. Like, you either feel nothing towards someone, or you're like an allosexual. And it's been difficult because I'm not one of those people. I sometimes feel sexual attraction and I sometimes don't. And sometimes I feel like labels are harmful in that way, because sure, there is a label for that, but it's just, I feel like within certain specific areas, the labels can be harmful.
When you get a chance, listen to my podcast where I interview Bells, because that was something that they spoke about, and it might help you feel just a little bit of a connection, because that
definitely.
kind of, I thought this about myself, and then I thought, well, maybe that doesn't 100% fit myself, and it was that concept of labeling, but then realizing maybe the label wasn't exactly right. And in a way saying, and I didn't really know how to talk with people because I was still and am still figuring it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that what you just said and a couple of other things you said today make me feel like listening to that interview would really help you feel, just, oh, okay, there's someone who's, and that's when you talked about Jasmine, when you talked about this being just a topic of conversation that's out there and open, that is 100% my goal with this, because I want kids who are online saying, hey, I want to hear from people like me, to find this and to listen and to have, 10, 20, 30, eventually, who knows how many interviews with other people who, and again, it's a whole community. Every person is different and every person's perspective is different. And you listen and you're like, oh, okay, they're kind of like me in this way, and they're kind of not like me in this way, and they're kind of like me in this way, and they're kind of just like everybody is kind of like someone and kind of not like someone. And you start to recognize just this is just normal. And there's a lot of people out there with my kind of normal, and there's a lot of people out there with someone else's kind of normal, but it's all normal.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's a good narrative to be making, because everyone's identity is unique, I've noticed. And the labels help people figure things out, of course. But I definitely have noticed that if there's a lot of people speaking up about themselves, even if it's different than someone else's situation, just seeing how many experiences people have is a really good thing to see.
Even you talking about the person on the stairs, the boy on the stairs, who was like, hey, can I talk with you? Because you being out helped him talk about who he was and helped him figure out who he was. And that's, and so it's bold and it's brave and it's so difficult at times, but it's also with these conversations, both with people like me who are allies and attempting to say, hey, everyone, look, it's fine. It's like the world is a fine place. We're all in it together. And people who are part of the community saying, hey, this is who I am. And it's cool. And then people saying, oh, I might be that. Can I talk with you? And it's just, and I think that to me is the dream of the future, where everyone just can talk to people to figure out who they are and figure out, and that who you are changes. And if you figure out who you are today and you feel like maybe, oh, I didn't quite have that, or that's not quite how I'm feeling tomorrow. And that's okay too. Like, again, even the labels we put on ourselves, I think sometimes we can then feel are restrictive of us, because like, oh, I've labeled myself. So now, like you said, am I asexual? Am I maybe slightly asexual, but slightly not? And how, and I already defined myself. And where does that change? And that's where the labels can be good starting points. And then at some point we have to say it's just a way to wrap our brain around something and then maybe let it go.
Yeah, of course. I definitely agree.
Mm-hmm.
I would love at some point in the future to check in with you guys again, because I feel like this has been fantastic and you guys are amazing to talk with, and you all have such well thought out, and your responses and your talking with me about this, I think will help people who listen. And I think you will provide perspectives that will be important. And I 100% appreciate all of your time today. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having us. I definitely appreciate it. I just hope I didn't talk over too many people.
It's always, one person, it's like different people talk at different amounts, and some people just are more okay, Jasmine or Sienna, did either of you feel like you didn't have enough time to say things? And is there anything more you would like to say?
I think I pretty much got everything out there that I wanted to. I just kind of said what was on my mind as the conversation was going. So I think I'm good there.
Yeah, I don't feel very left out, even though I didn't talk that much, because I feel like a lot of us are on the same page. So a lot of the points you guys would make, I agreed with. So
yeah, we all agreed. So there was not much to add, because we kind of already said what we were thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Alex, I did not get the sense that I got the sense that maybe you processed the questions a little bit. So you popped in first, and like Jasmine and Sienna said, so then sometimes you said what they had thought of. And to me, it was a great conversation. It was a great conversation with great flow. And I thought all of you made really great points. And again, thank you for being with me today.
Of course. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
It was definitely fun. I'd love to do it again.
I would love to also. And yeah, so reach out. If anything happens and you want to say, I'd really love to talk about this event happened, this thing happened, or I had this revelation, or I just realized there's this thing I really want to share. Or if anything comes up and you just be like, hey, can we put that in a podcast and get it out there? Just hit me up. I'm there for you, and I'll totally do it. And I would love, and if you know anybody who would like to talk with me, who you feel like would like to share their experience, I would love to talk with anyone. You have my phone number, you have my email, you can give it to anyone you want.
Of course.
Well, that's it for me today. As always, thank you for listening to Creating Safe Schools. Hear more podcasts at creatingsafeschools.com/podcasts. Stay safe, be kind, and have a great day.